before this episode, if you want to see the words as well as hear them, get exclusive content, access to the regular episodes before anyone else, and take part in the monthly questions and comments edition, you can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify and get all of that for the price of a very average coffee a month. Okay, let's get on with it. We now have details of the alleged ransom notes sent to the Guthries after the kidnapping of their mom, Nancy.
Hello, Savannah. We have your mother, Nancy. She is safe but scared. She will be held for ransom, and once payment is received, she will be released unharmed. We will be holding her for a maximum of 7 days.
6 months on from Nancy's disappearance, what are these notes really saying? Are they genuine? And who wrote them? Let's look at the words to find out. Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're new to this channel, what I do, I've studied the words of thousands of criminals, so I can show you how people use words to lie, to cheat, and to manipulate. And I can also show you what the truth sounds like too. So Nancy Guthrie. Nancy was kidnapped in January this year. Since then, nothing. She hasn't been heard from. She hasn't been found. She's vanished into thin air. Her daughter Savannah is a television presenter, which has brought this case to even more prominence. Now, the ransom notes, the media did report on the notes at the time, but we didn't know what was in them. We've never had the details shared until now. Crime Junkie Podcast have shared some of the content of the notes, although the headlines might say these are the full notes. Actually, these are not the full notes. So let's bear that in mind when we analyse them. But let's look at them and see how much we can learn from the words that are used inside, building up data points to see what is being said inside the words. The first note starts, "Hello, Savannah," and that is stating the audience here, which is something I say to look at really often, especially in written communications. Who's the audience? You ever had an email that's addressed to you, but your boss is CC'd and you know your boss is the real audience? That's the secondary audience. There's a stated audience, which would be you in the email, and the CC is your boss. That's the secondary audience. Sometimes in media things like this, there is a stated audience. It's directed at someone, but there's a much wider audience, like the whole world sometimes. Law enforcement might be a secondary audience here. We don't know the secondary audience, if there even is a secondary audience for this, but we know the audience here is Savannah. And it starts with "Hello, Savannah," not "Dear Savannah," which would be slightly more formal. This is obviously someone who hasn't gone for that formal approach. So maybe the first data point that we want to consider is that this person is slightly younger, not using that fusty old style "Dear Savannah," which would come from the days of writing letters, which we don't do anymore. It's "Hello, Savannah." It's a little bit less formal, potentially a younger person. The next thing we hear is, "We have your mother, Nancy. She is safe but scared." Now, the very first word of all of that is, of the content really of this note, is "we." Now, in ransom notes, very often, the very first things that are said, or some of the first things that are said, are words, phrases to hide the identity of the person that has sent the ransom note, because that person doesn't want to be caught. Think of the John Benet Ramsey one. "We were a small foreign faction," which was absolute bull. So that "we," look, this could go one of many ways. Is this more than one person who's claiming responsibility here, more than one person who's in on it with the "we"? Or is it one person trying to appear bigger than they are? It's the very first thing they say is, "There's not one of us, there are more than one of us, several of us, we there." So is that leakage, that it's more than one person? Or is that sort of a safety in numbers? I'm bigger, I'm hiding my identity a bit by saying "we." "We have your mother, Nancy." Nancy doesn't need introducing to Savannah, so that's quite strange. We have your mother, we have Nancy, we have your mom. Those would all be ways of saying why you are getting in touch. "We have your mother, Nancy," all just feels a little bit like, well, building credibility. We don't just have Nancy, we have your mother, Nancy. But Nancy needs no introduction to Savannah, and that's well known because by the time this was sent, we all knew the relationship between Savannah and Nancy. So why have they felt the need to say "your mother, Nancy" there? And for all the "hello, Savannah," that's quite casual. "Your mother, Nancy" is quite formal, and a less formal version, if it was an American, would be "your mom." But no, we get "your mother, Nancy." So an elevation in formality there, or is it something else? We will see with that. It carries on. She is safe but scared. Well, really, she's been held to ransom. So is she safe? Is she really safe? What you're going to say there, we will be holding her for a maximum of 7 days. If you pay us, she will be unharmed. That means she is not safe. But there's something there that makes them want to say, oh, look, like us. We're looking after her. She is safe but scared. And then we get some passive language. She will be held for ransom. Now, that is not saying we are holding her for ransom. It's saying she will be held for ransom. Maybe a little bit of distancing there from the person. Maybe it's not real. Maybe that is why this person has distancing language, because they are not holding Nancy to ransom. They're just trying to extort some money. Or maybe it's a little bit of distancing from a real kidnapper. Not, I'm a really bad person and I'm holding her to ransom. They use that softening distance language. She will be held for ransom. Interestingly, what we've got here, they have Nancy and they want a ransom. So she is being held for ransom. That will be is at some point in the future. Just something else that makes me think, is this real? Because is this really the experience of a kidnapper's words coming out? She will be held for ransom, and once payment is received, she will be released unharmed. We will be holding her for a maximum of 7 days. Now, we will be holding her for a maximum of 7 days. We have that we again there. So is this just safety in numbers or is it leakage? But, again, is this first thing hiding the identity? Is this a solo person there? And we will be holding her for a maximum of 7 days. Again, that's that sort of future-facing thing. It doesn't ring genuine to me in this first paragraph. There is a little bit more that will ring genuinely to me. Also, just in terms of not so much the words, but it's stated in the words, we will be holding her for a maximum of 7 days, is like giving a deadline without saying the deadline is, and if you don't pay us then bad things are going to happen. It's softer than that. And also, what a long time to hold someone for when the entire country is aware of her disappearance and people must be on red alert looking for Nancy Guthrie at this point. There's no urgency there. There seems to be plenty of time to get this all over and done with. The next thing we hear from the note is once payment is received to the Bitcoin address below, she will be released within 12 hours of deposit to a safe drop-off location back in Tucson. Now, the priority coming through here is payment. You can see there that she will be held for ransom. Payment is one of the first things mentioned here. Then again, it's all about payment. Once payment is received to the Bitcoin address below, she will be released. So this is all payment, and it's a conditional payment. You pay, she's released. So is that the priority here? Getting paid. Now, that could be the priority of a kidnapper as well as an extortionist, but certainly getting money seems to be a priority of this person. She will be released is passive again. So we have this distancing, or is it this leakage of not having her? She will be released within 12 hours of deposit. Really, really explicit about their plans there. So you pay us, then within 12 hours of deposit, we will take her back to Tucson. Again, is that a red herring there? So that the police, if the ransom was paid, are looking in the wrong place there. All eyes on Tucson, and they're letting her go somewhere in Miami or something like that. We don't know, but they're very, very detailed about their plans. And I would suggest that those plans are fake if someone has thought through this in any way. And again, we have this lack of urgency. So there's this 12-hour delay from deposit to being released. So passive in the language and very explicit about the plans. But the phrase, she will be released within 12 hours of deposit, is a bit clunky. It's not a natural way we would speak. Within 12 hours of being paid, we will release her. It would be something slightly more expected. So we have, again, maybe this formal language like mother, 12 hours of deposit. The language seems slightly more formal than I would expect, especially with that opening of Hello, Savannah. If the payment is not received by the last deadline on Monday the 9th at 5 p.m, she will be killed. Now, she was safe before. She was safe, but now she's going to be killed if payment is not released. And when is payment got to be done? By the last deadline. That's really interesting wording, not the deadline, but it suggests there's going to be other deadlines. Or again, is this a slightly clunky use of the English language? I think you might know where I'm going at with this. If payment is not received by the last deadline, a deadline deadline is a deadline unless you want to extend it. And that might be the case because these folk don't seem to be in any rush or any urgency to get this over and done with. It continues, your mother is aware of this and her life is in your hands. It is in the best interest of everyone to have this completed as soon as possible. So this feels manipulative. Her life is in your hands. It's all up to you. We're not going to be responsible for killing her. We did say before she will be killed. Oh, by the way, you will notice as well, that's passive, not we will kill her. It's just she will be killed. So do we have that distancing there again? Or do we have this fact that, yeah, this person does not have Nancy at all and is just in it for the money? Your mother is aware of this and her life is in your hands. Manipulative at its very best. And it is in the best interest of everyone to have this completed as soon as possible, assuming this is a real transcript, authentic transcript, that grammatically should be best interests. And when we do singulars and plurals, they're almost automatic to us. And they know that the interest of Savannah is getting her mum back. Their interest is in getting the money. So there are two interests at play here. It should be best interests. Maybe I'm just being that person who picks up pedantically on grammar, or maybe, again, this is someone who's not quite au fait with how English works. But look, timing is really important here. However, it really is, all over the place. Timing is important. We'll be holding her for a max of 7 days. There's a last deadline, 12 hours. We will be, releasing her. So these all seem like, yeah, that's all fine. This is the timeline. We've got a week to do this. After that, we're going to wait 12 hours, etc., etc. And then there is, it's in the best interest of everyone to have this completed as soon as possible, which is at odds with some of the other things they've said around the deadlines and the time that they will spend on doing this. So again, there's a contradiction there in the words, which makes me think, I'm not sure this is real. And then we have the slip. You will not be able to contact me from here on out. Me. Oh, it was we previously. We have her. We're going to do these things. But this now is coming from one person. You will not be able to contact me from here on out. Now, that word here on out or that phrase here on out is extra. They could have just said, you will not be able to contact me. And that would have been a fine sentence. It would have meant what it means. Adding from here on out doesn't add anything to it at all. So why have they added in from here on out? Does that mean that there was an ability to contact them before? Possibly. Or again, it's someone who's not using the English language properly. There will be no negotiation. Do not play games. Law enforcement will not be able to help you. Now, negotiation and games are stated as things that won't happen. It's very passive. There will be no negotiation. Do not play games. But then law enforcement will not be able to help you is something else different. It's not saying don't go to law enforcement. It's not saying don't speak to them at all. It doesn't say that law enforcement shouldn't be contacted. Something we see a lot in real ransom notes. Does this person have no fear of American law enforcement catching up with them? They don't seem to have any fear of it whatsoever. So negotiation and games are stated as things that won't happen, that they won't do. But law enforcement, they're not saying, do not talk to law enforcement. It's just they will not be able to help you. And these things, you'll notice, they're stated as facts, not orders. There will be no negotiation, not do not try and negotiate with us. Do not play games. That's a little bit more of an order. Law enforcement will not be able to help you. Stated as a fact. There is no real big attempt, apart from play games, to enforce how Savannah should behave on receiving this. So my observations on note number 1. The language used is quite flat. There's nothing very personal in it. The words that are used suggest an education to a certain standard in places, but not everywhere. And we have that strange formal word, maybe professional or formal words, mother, deposit, location, negotiation, all seem to be in there. But there are some slips. So we have that phrase of best interest singular, last deadline. These are not proper English phrases. We have the we and me slip as well. And I'm told the Bitcoin part, which has not been shared with us, they ask for the money in US dollars or USD is how it's done, which is not how an American talks about money. In fact, the American might even drop the dollars and just state an amount that they want to get, but they've asked for it in USD, which as someone who's not from America, that's how American currency appears on lists and on invoices and so on when it's someone outside the country looking to spend or buy in American dollars. USD is the code for the currency. The priorities that are there are money and time. Getting the payment is a big priority. Money is all over the place. It seems to be, time is all over the place. So it seems to be they have large amounts of time to do these things and lots of time to wait basically for this payment. And then they say, yeah, do it as soon as possible. There is a repetition in there of Nancy will die. They want to get that point across. And also in this note, although the actual wording is not shared with us, apparently they offered 2 bits of proof that they were a genuine kidnapper. Number 1 was details of a smartwatch on the floor of Nancy's bedroom. And number 2 was about a light that was broken at the back of Nancy Guthrie's house. And what interested me when I heard about that was that the proof was offered about the kidnap scene, the kidnap site, the scene of the crime. The proof was not about Nancy as a person, Nancy being with them and being able to get something from Nancy. If you look into the history of kidnappings, some horrible things have been sent to prove that the kidnapping is real and that they have that person. They don't seem to want to offer any proof that they have that person. Some other observations that are there in the note. Liars often use words and repetition to persuade and convince us that a lie is true. Here, there is nothing in it to persuade and convince us that they have Nancy, which is something that a liar might really overplay their part and keep going on and on and on and on about the fact they have Nancy. This note doesn't seem to do that, but ultimately for me, the note's intention is to get money. Like I say, that could be a kidnapper who wants paid or an extortionist who thinks they are on to a good thing. And then there was a second note that seemed to be written after Nancy Guthrie passed away, which we will look at next. We'll go back to the episode in a moment, but if this breakdown hits home, make sure you're following or subscribe to this podcast, because what I'm doing here isn't just a one-off episode. We are building a skill. And like any talent worth having, it takes repetition. The more you hear these patterns, the more naturally you'll spot them in your actual life. I hear it from listeners so often. Eventually, you can't unhear this stuff. You'll be in a meeting or on a call, and you'll start noticing the subtext earlier than anyone else, which gives you an edge in how you respond. If you aren't ready to commit to training just yet, but you found this episode valuable, do me a quick favour. Leave a rating or share this episode. It's the best way to feed the algorithms and ensure these tools get into the ears of the people who genuinely need them. And if you want to be more careful with how you speak, to talk with more clarity, authority and confidence, then do search for my other podcast. It's available everywhere. Just search for How Words Work. Right, let's get back to the episode. And again, it's extracts from the note that we're going to look at when we look at this second note. It's not the full one, but the extracts that have been shared start. We did not fully grasp the seriousness of her physical conditions. We never intended to hurt her. That was not our intention. So we have we again. And in fact, all the way through this in the excerpts that have been shared, it's we. I think this is someone hiding in the comfort of being more than one person, although I think it's very likely it is one person. So we did not fully grasp the seriousness of her physical conditions. Interesting that they didn't mention any of this in the first note, if that first note was indeed sent by the same person. But, you know, it's not, we did not know the seriousness of her physical conditions. It did not fully grasp. So they knew they were there. They're just saying we didn't fully grasp the seriousness of her physical conditions. Grasp, interesting word when someone has been forcibly grasped, taken from their house. And also that fully says that they did know something about the seriousness of her physical conditions. We never intended to hurt her. Now, that was interesting. We never intended to hurt her. That is an implication that this person's saying they did hurt her. Because if you never intended to hurt her, I never intended to break that glass that I broke. I never intended to go out wearing odd socks. We never intended to hurt her. Sounds like they did hurt her. And obviously hurt her is downplaying what happened a lot. If they're saying that Nancy is dead here, you did more than hurt her. You killed her. You brought about the end of her life, but that's just been softened to hurt. That was not our intention. So, some more notes on that. The physical conditions were public. Very quickly, those physical conditions and the seriousness of them were public. Interestingly, they don't say her physical condition. They pluralize this and say physical conditions. So they were aware there was more than one physical condition going on with Nancy, who had a few physical conditions at all. We never intended to hurt her. Now, does this come from the same person? Because they told us that they intended to hurt her if the ransom wasn't paid. In the first note, they very much said, we're going to hurt her. But I'm intrigued in what they're saying, because if you think about it, if she died of an illness, of a physical condition, they didn't hurt her. She perished, she passed away, if you like. But it seems to be some inference in there that they caused that hurt. And I guess they did if they didn't take her medication, didn't look after her properly at all. But there seems to be just the slightest hint there of some feelings of guilt. It carries on. She perished shortly after she was taken. We believe it was heart-related. And in this, I see a lot of downplaying. She perished, died, would be a much more straightforward way of saying it. Perished is making it soft. Again, just like hurt her. She perished shortly after she was taken. Again, this is downplaying. She was taken. She was abducted. She was kidnapped. And also, who did it? The actors have gone there. It's not after we took her. We believe it was heart-related. Again, this we going on there. We believe it was heart-related. But again, these are well-documented public facts that she had heart issues. And then there's a strange wording. She is buried in nature now. Well, everyone's buried in nature. I guess if you're buried, you are kind of with nature. Not a phrase I've heard before, apart from in sort of poetic senses. Maybe ChatGPT or AI has helped write that. She is buried in nature now. Nothing could have been done that could have changed the outcome. Well, it could have been. You could have not taken her. I think that probably would not have had the same outcome. We are truly sorry. And they say, I mean, you sound like you're not that sorry, but trying to mitigate it. So in that second note, the second note has a lot of differences from the first note. In fact, almost the second note sounds more genuine to me than the first one, because this is someone trying to mitigate some actions, a lot of softness and a lot of downplaying. So the second note has we a lot in it, repeated uses of we. The first one had we, but had a slip, I think, with a me there. The second note, the person seems to have no control of the situation. Things are happening outside of their control. The first note, the person there had a lot more control and a bit of cruelty in there as well. Humanity and Nancy as a real person and not a commodity is in this second note. So in the first note, she was going to get hurt. She was going to get killed if you didn't pay up the ransom. Here, Nancy is a real person, and there's an element of humanity in talking about how she perished and how she is buried with nature. That was not there in the first note. The second note seems concerned about Savannah. That didn't exist in the first note. It was actually very cruel towards her. Her life is in your hands. She will be killed if you don't pay the money. Whereas this one seems a bit more empathetic towards Savannah. The theme in this, the second note, is mitigation. You know, that is the theme. We didn't grasp the severity. She perished. We never intended to hurt her. We think it was heart issues. It wasn't really us that caused it. It was, the physical symptoms. She's buried in nature. We're sorry. And there's a shift in tone. It's not Savannah being blamed. It's not blaming Savannah at all, even though they said her life is in your hands. So who wrote the first note then? Let's go back and think of that. I think it was likely male. There's a lot of numbers there, which statistically means it's more likely to come from a male, and lower personal pronouns. There's just that one we there. Females use the words I and my a lot more when they write. In general, not every single female does that. There's the cruelty in there, which is a bit more of a male trait. The controlling language, which we see a lot more in males than we do in females. And also mechanics of the process that's going on. Again, male traits in writing. So I think the first note, more likely written by a male, possibly a non-native English speaker, for that formality may have come from translation or AI trying to write, good, proper English. So they may have had some help out there, and it's just some phrases just not quite right, last deadline and so on. They may have had Nancy, but they're not worried about being caught. Now, who... Male, okay, that's half the world. Possibly a non-English speaker not worried about being caught is someone who's not even in America. So maybe just some extortionist trying their hand, trying to get the money. Maybe if they were genuine and they do have Nancy, she was taken outside of the country very quickly, because that person is just not worried about being caught whatsoever. They don't try and call off law enforcement or anything like that. Who wrote the second note? Still not worried about being caught. They are worried about the effects of what they said, but they're not, saying, please don't think badly of us and don't come looking for us or anything like that. Again, possibly a non-native English speaker, although less so, but that we haven't seen the full note, so maybe there's more in the note that would lead to that. But again, the buried with nature feels like a poetic phrase which has come from somewhere else, not a person who decides to kidnap an old woman and hold her to ransom. Certainly, though, this feels like someone wanting to draw a line under things, someone wanting to hide their personal identity, because obviously one person will have written that, but they keep talking about we. Someone who does not want to take responsibility, trying to, make it all passive. And, it was the heart condition, it was physical conditions which killed her, not the fact that she suffered a huge trauma if I took her. As someone, though, who doesn't exhibit cruelty. And there was a bit of cruelty in that first one, with her life is in your hands and the coldness of we will kill her. This is someone who's not wanting money anymore, doesn't even mention money in any of the extracts we've seen. Less likely to be male than the first note because there's more emotional intelligence and more empathy in there, but only less likely to be male. I'm not saying that the first one was male and the second one was female, just a little bit, showing a little bit less male traits than the first ones. But in these extracts, bar that strange phrasing that makes me think not English, there's nothing that ties the two notes together factually at all in the extracts that we've heard. So I'm really open to the fact these might not have come from the same person. That's what I've got. Were they genuine? The first one, I don't think so. The first one, if you had to ask me to make a choice, I think is extortion and not from someone holding Nancy. The second one, well, that could be from someone who feels remorse and feels like, yeah, I need to apologise for what I've done here. But would someone with the cruelty to take an old person and hold them for ransom like that even bother getting in touch? I'm not so sure, which again would just make me think both could very well just be false notes. If there's anything else inside them that makes investigators believe they are true, I'd be all ears. But from what I've seen, I think on balance, probably not real, probably come from outside the country, and the first one was all about extortion and getting money. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you can, or get in touch on the socials. You'll find them all listed at neveratruerword.com, where there's a whole load more on the Nancy Guthrie missing case too. That's neveratruerword.com. I'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word, and remember, the truth is always in the words.